think that's one of the things our business is really good at, is taking on stuff we know nothing about and then very quickly, with humility, kind of working through it to become experts in it. If you think about Coke and their strategy of trying to get a Coke within arm's reach of every American, we've essentially done that within 4 years because of our omni-channel approach.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, and you're listening to Soul and Science. Fast forward your marketing mind in about 20 minutes. Welcome to the podcast. I am joined today by David Lester, CEO of Olipop. We're super excited to talk to Olipop today. David Lester is the co-founder of Olipop, the first clinically backed consumer beverage combining the flavors of classic soda with scientifically proven elements to support digestive health. David brings to Olipop nearly 2 decades of experience in the beverage industry, following a decade with Diageo and assignments in Sydney, Australia, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and many others. David left the drinks giant and pursued an entrepreneurial career. In 2013, David collaborated with his still current partner, Ben, to launch Obi Probiotic Soda, a line of water, kefir-based sodas. After selling that business, David and Ben took their learnings that they gained and embarked on their second venture, which is known today as Olipop. David's a strategic thinker with a passion for disruptive innovation, and he's on a mission to provide an affordable, delicious alternative to soda that delivers cutting-edge health benefits to mainstream consumers. David is a creative and conceptual marketer with broad, on-the-ground international experience in commercial execution. Since launching Olipop in 2018, David has led marketing and sales strategy, growing the footprint to nearly 5,000 points of sale nationwide, including Whole Foods, Sprouts, Safeway, Wegmans, and Kroger. David has also led the charge on Olipop's e-commerce strategy, which has grown from zero to nearly half the revenue mix since the onset of COVID-19. We are excited to talk to him, and here we go. Welcome to the podcast, David. What is the David Lester origin story? How did you get into where you are now?
Yeah, I grew up in the northwest of England in a fairly working class area just outside of Liverpool. My mum was a school teacher. My dad worked for the local council. So, I didn't really have that much exposure to large business, corporations, certainly nothing in the realms of VC funding. But my family's originally from Scotland, and my grandfather on my mother's side was an entrepreneur. He ran a haulage and sand dredging business on the east coast of Scotland. Haulage is like doing trucks and managing trucks and lorries. So a pretty unglamorous business, to be honest. And that's essentially pulled him out of kind of a working class into a middle class existence. He was able to send my mum to college for the first time. So I remember going and seeing his garage and the trucks and how he ran his business and just the independence that he had too. And that always really fascinated me. So I did, about a decade with Diageo. That was somewhat fortuitous that I got into that line of work. I had a loose idea, like a lot of us do, when I left college around what I wanted to do. Marketing sounded fun and interesting, and Diageo seemed like a good company. And, it was a fantastic experience. I got amazing training to work with some really great people. Got to work in London for 4 years, Sydney for 4 years, and then a couple of years in Sao Paulo in Brazil. And by that point, I was just kind of ready to do my own thing. I found my learning curve had tapped out, and I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly, but I was probably just like looking for adventure and looking for meaning, I think, in my work too. Having a mom as a school teacher and my dad, managing parks and open spaces. There were jobs that had a real impact on people's lives. And I didn't necessarily feel that way about the work that I was doing. So my wife's American. We just got engaged, and she wanted to go back to the States from Brazil. And I told my boss at Diageo I was quitting. And she said, well, if your mind's made up, you might want to speak to this guy. He's looking for a business partner. And that turned out to be Ben.
That's incredible. So you quit a job. Instead of them getting mad, they set you up on your next course.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, it was a great company, and my boss at the time was really cool, and she could see that I was just sort of, done with that line of work, and yeah, extremely fortuitous that I got put in touch with Ben, and I met him at a coffee shop in Palo Alto, and he had a bag of sodas. I think he'd made them in SodaStream and then, hand filtered them into little bottles and capped them. And I didn't know anything about the gut microbiome probiotics, but I tried the sodas and he told me how much sugar was in them. I was like, wow, these taste really good. I mean, Ben had been working on this for like 5 years. It was
Yeah.
a big, heavy lift on like the product formulation side. He'd done a lot of work getting the thing to where it was, and then he was looking for a business partner to help kind of fund it and bring it to life. And so that's essentially what we did. And I got back from that meeting, and I think I actually had an offer for another consulting job. And my wife was quite excited about that because we'd both be earning for the first time. She wasn't earning in Brazil. About to get married. We could meet up as a young couple in San Francisco and have lunch together. And I got back from this meeting and she was like, "Oh no, you're going to do this thing with this guy, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, it was super. It was just, he had a real kind of purpose behind what he was doing as well. There's a reason for it, and extremely knowledgeable, super autodidactic guy. And, we had 4 years on Obi that was classic first venture, probably made all the mistakes you could possibly make, tasted some success, and, came out the back end of it by the skin of our teeth with a modest exit and, a bunch of learnings. And yeah, I actually had to do quite a lot of self-reflection. I think, startup, a lot of people describe it as a personal journey as much as a professional one. And, I definitely agree with that.
Well, I love that your partner was so supportive of you taking that leap because it's not for the faint of heart when you're building a startup.
Yeah.
It is a challenge. And it seems like that entrepreneurial spirit you're kind of born into.
Yeah, I think to a degree, it definitely it the my jobs at Diageo never really felt like real jobs to me because you're so insulated there in a large company. I didn't feel fully exposed to kind of the ups and downs, rigs of business. Kind of careful what you wish for because I certainly got that when I started working, on Obi, and probably was not adequately prepared for it. But in startup, as I say, you're either succeeding or you're learning, and it's kind of the privilege of entrepreneurship that you get the chance to do that.
Do you think having a marketing background prepared you for the CEO road?
Yeah, actually, in our company, Ben is the CEO and I'm president, but I think our partnership is quite a unique one, actually, and to date has been very effective. I think on Obi it wasn't. We didn't work together very well. We're very different people, so we do have similar values, which is important. But we hadn't figured out how to work together. I mean, at the end of that, we reflected on it. And we're like, look, we didn't kill each other, so clearly there's some hope for us. But we do need to listen to each other more, and we do need to understand each other better. And if we're not aligned, like this thing is dead on arrival. It's a common issue, I think, with a lot of co-founding teams is that, there's an arrogance that you think you can work around the other person, or, you just try and sort of shortcut something without running it by them. And we learned the hard way that you can't do that. So in terms of learning entrepreneurial skills around, self-sufficiency and skepticism required in doing things and resilience, he had that in spades. And it's definitely valuable for me to see the workings of a large CPG company and what's required, and also half of my career was spent in concept development, new product innovation. So I launched probably tens of products, sort of vast majority of them failed, but you learn from those lessons. And so there's only so many ways that a CPG product can fail. So after you've seen 10 or 20 of them, you start to see the patterns. And, I think that's helpful in allowing us to avoid some of the pitfalls as well.
What do you think your creative or entrepreneurial superpower is?
I'm certainly good at taking large amounts of complex data and information and finding a path forward. I think which is important in the entrepreneurial space. There's so many paths available to you, particularly when you're at the beginning of something. It's very hard to wade through the information and the data you're receiving and find a path. I'd say, for the errors that I've made, there's also an equal amount of resilience there too. Like a lot of people say, wow, you guys went back again after that first experience. And, I think a lot of people don't. And I respect that too, because you have to sort of understand what your boundaries are and what suits you and what doesn't. Um, and, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't really like being told what to do. I don't like following rules that much. There's kind of a natural sort of disobedience in some way to kind of challenge things, or and I think both Ben and I are quite science minded in the sense that we just want to find what the right answer is. When something seems stupid to us, we want to kind of figure out. We're like, there's a better way to do this. We're not just going to follow the rules because they're the rules. There's something that needs to be broken here purposefully in order to find a better way to find a better outcome.
You mentioned you can kind of wade through a lot of data and sort of find the right path forward. And I know you invested in a dedicated research team. Tell me a little bit about how that works in informing Olipop.
Yeah, I guess the first point I made, when I refer to data, I'm like all kinds of data points, right? It might be something that someone said to you, or something that you've read. You're trying to synthesize information, see what's most important. Specifically in relation to our health advisory board, we work with some of the leading researchers and microbiologists in the country. We've recently done studies with Baylor and Purdue medical colleges, and we got the initial results back from those studies at the beginning of this year, and that was a pretty nerve-wracking experience because these are top tier university academic institutions. These are not people that you can pay to say like, hey, we really want this thing to come out this way. Can you just kind of point the data in that direction? It's going to come out how it comes out. And, Ben is a really skilled formulator. He's done a lot of research, but until you get the data back, you don't know. And so it was super validating for us to see those results showing that drinking Olipop increases microbial diversity in the gut. It increases the production of bifidobacterium, which is considered the human probiotic present in breast milk. And it also showed an increase in the production of short chain fatty acids, which are the secondary compounds that your gut produces when it's working properly. So they're typically very understated. The researchers, these academic institutions, they just kind of sent it across with I think this is what you were looking for. And we opened it and kind of freaked out because, the results were quite incredible.
Where does the name come from?
Naming, I think, is the hardest aspect of any concept development. It's very, very difficult to land on a name. Olipop comes from oligosaccharides, which is kind of the technical name for, prebiotic fibers. And then pop just as in soda pop. So we wanted to kind of combine, the science element and the fun element of what we're doing, and, create a name that was kind of distinct, easy to say, and sounded like a soda, and Olipop, I think, does.
That's a great name. When you think about your audience, when you first started out, who was the audience then and who's the audience now?
Yeah, I think initially, for a health product, you're always easiest going to like a wellness market first. Typically, women are quicker to pick these things up than guys, as a generalization. And so, Instagram, when we started 4 years ago, was a really important tool. It was also important to be in the right stores. So, Erewhon, as a launch retailer for us in LA, was kind of a key place for us to be. We're now in close to 20,000 doors, actually, at this point, national in Walmart, national in Target. That's opened up new audiences. I think over 80% of people buying Olipop have never bought anything from the digestive health set before, which is kind of pretty cool. So this point, our consumers, really what we term the happy seekers. It's people who are who are conscious about their health in some way. They're trying to make some adjustment to their lifestyle or what they're eating. It actually represents nearly 3/4 of the population at this point, which surprised me, but I guess shouldn't be that surprising given, how much information we're getting around, the importance of focus on health. Looking at some of the soda brands, once you go to like a 16-ounce bottle, which people drink as a single serve, there's like 70, sometimes 80 grams of sugar in that. So,
Jesus.
we come in at like 2 to max 5, and 9 grams of dietary fiber, 8 different plant-based botanicals to support digestive health. If you look at our ingredients panel, you'll see that, and consumers do, and they're like, look, doesn't taste exactly like Coke, but it's pretty damn close, and it's not sparkling water. I'm prepared to pay a little bit extra to kind of, retain that soda experience and everything that comes with it, the kind of nostalgia of drinking a root beer. In fact, we have, lapsed consumers that haven't touched soda or a root beer in years, and they drink one of ours and they're like, oh, this takes me back to sitting on the porch with my granddad or going fishing with my dad, or whatever it is. It's woven into the fabric of certainly American society and culture, probably global culture at this point. And that's why it's so difficult for people to give it up, because it's not a simple thing of just giving up, a drink or a product you don't care about. People really care about this product.
Do you have a harder time convincing people that it tastes good or that it's supportive of digestive health and that it's good for you? Do you have which one's harder to pull off, do you find?
I have our team more focused on the former rather than the latter, because, you kind of look at the product, you give a code, even if you don't understand anything about prebiotics or fiber, you at least see it's only got 2 grams of sugar in. If you've got a basic understanding of nutritional panels. So the challenge is like that this tastes good, and that because most health products don't, we actually explored like, what we call this product, how we call this category. And, when we tried healthy soda, people were like, oh, no, definitely do not call it that. I do not want to be drinking healthy soda. That sounds awful.
Right.
So, a lot of the focus of our marketing efforts, and we have some really exciting celebrity partnerships coming up. Just one we recently just launched with Camila Cabello. Like, you're competing with the Super Bowl and, these types of things. So, we have, if we want to go toe to toe with the major soda brands, which we do, we can't be talking about, digestive health or a farm that the ingredients were grown on or a founder story. This category is about connection and fun. So that's where we're firmly positioning our marketing strategy.
And how do you think about the split between e-commerce and retail?
It's a great question. We essentially developed a D2C business through COVID, kind of by necessity. I think we were going to be launching into kind of food service channel before COVID hit. And then, of course, everything shut down, including the ability to sample your product in stores, which for a beverage startup is kind of essential, to growing your brand. So we were trying to launch a product at a time when there was essentially no way to sample the thing other than online. And so that's where we doubled down on. And, fortunately we discovered low cost of inventory and ads at that time too. And quickly built quite a substantial D2C business that is now expanded into our omni-channel business. So, if you think about Coke and their strategy of trying to get a Coke within arm's reach of every American, we've essentially done that within 4 years because of our omni-channel approach. Like, you can order Olipop online, and I think in 5 to 7 US metros, you can get that same day on your doorstep, sometimes within hours of ordering it. I think that's one of the things our business is really good at, is taking on stuff we know nothing about, and then very quickly, with humility, kind of working through it to become experts in it.
Do you make decisions, you and Ben make decisions more in the head or more in the heart?
Our brain does a lot of subconscious processing, right? So you're well advised to listen to intuition on things, at least understand it. So there's times that, what we focus on is self-awareness. So like, you have to, you don't need to be perfect, but you do need to understand yourself, because none of us are perfect. But like, where is it that you particularly spike? Where is it that you tend to derail? So when you have a gut instinct around something, where's that coming from? Is it coming from a derailer, or is it coming from actually kind of good intuition? And so what we tend to do is we don't ignore any intuition that we have, but we do analyze it and we do learn about each other, and where we kind of balance each other out on those things, and talk stuff through. I think that's really important. That inclusive with all of our team, specifically our leadership team as well. Groups tend to get to better decisions for that reason. Sometimes a little slower, but more robust decision making. Um, you know, Equal to that, we are pretty data driven as a business. But we tend to look at it on quite kind of a macro level. So I think, when you're moving fast in a startup, like you need to understand things like what your cost of goods are, and the trajectory of your gross margin, and your sales data, and which retailers are working and which aren't. But you don't need to drill down like 50 layers deep on that, or start having all your decisions driven by kind of you know data and metrics per se. But yeah, it is. We do have a fairly tight focus on data, certainly reliable data too. Because sometimes you get data and you think it's because it's in a chart, it's reliable, but you got to look at where's the inputs for that coming from.
That's so true. How do you make the decision when something becomes limited edition to this has to be part of our permanent lineup? And then how do you decide, what new flavors to try out? What's that process like?
So for new flavors, we're very driven by Ben and his palate. As I mentioned, like very skilled formulators. So, we look at the major soda categories, right? It would be kind of crazy not to have a cola, not to have a root beer. So I think for the first few years, we were just kind of knocking off those major soda categories, of which I think we've gotten most, if not all of them at this point. And then, some of it's just driven by Ben's palate. Like he just was really interested in making this strawberry, cream soda type flavor. It was actually based off strawberry cream saver that he used to eat when he was younger, that he really loved the flavor of. And so it's not something that you would get from any kind of data. That is actually our top seller or second top, depending, where root beer sits. But again, that was just off his kind of intuition and his palate. So, and then in terms of, permanent flavors versus limited edition, we recently did a limited edition with Minions, which is pretty fun. And Universal approached us and said, "Look, we'd love to partner with you on the launch of this movie." And we said, "Look, this sounds really fun. Let's have a think about what we could do." And so we're like, "Of course, we've got to do a flavor for this launch." And Minions are yellow, and so we're like, "Let's think of yellow fruits." And I don't know if you are familiar with the Minions or not, but they're kind of obsessed with bananas. So we were like, what if we did like a banana soda? Because it does exist. Like I think in, a place like Thailand, it's actually pretty normal flavor. And coincidentally, Ben had been thinking about this because he was like, what's like the most challenging flavor I could try and do? And so he developed like this banana cream, which actually tastes amazing. Yeah, we try and sort of have slightly more um, flavors that push boundaries a little bit that we can do for exclusives to keep the interest and intrigue of our consumers. And then, when you're putting something full scale into retail, you want to have a little bit more certainty around how that's going to work.
So are you guys are you doubling every year?
More than doubling at this point.
More
Yeah.
than doubling. Wow. That is a lot of growth.
It's a great product, and Ben put a lot of thought into it. And I think that's sometimes overlooked, on innovation. Like it is really important to get an amazing product. And say Ben's a great formulator. A ton of thought went into developing this thing. Also, a lot of empathy and trying to solve a real consumer need. Like, people love soda. It's very difficult to give up. Our goal is to meet them where they are and say, look, we get it. It's delicious. And we're not going to kind of finger wag at you and tell you shouldn't be drinking soda. Just why don't try this one instead? Like we've worked really hard to make it taste delicious. And they're like, it does taste delicious. And, not only is it better for me, it's actually kind of good for me. That momentum really just kind of snowballs. I think in startup, and I found this on our first venture, like your good decisions and your bad decisions compound. So we essentially found ourselves on our first venture, like boxed in an impossible situation. And when I speak to first time entrepreneurs, sometimes you can see that you're like, okay, you just need to kind of fold the deck now because it's too hard to get out of where you've got to. And having the discipline around that decision making is very, very difficult, particularly first time around. You need a bit of the kind of war wounds to keep you on track, which so far I think we've done an okay job of in this second venture.
Tell us a little bit about the mission side. Obviously, you're helping people in a big way with an alternative. What else is the brand behind that's sort of bigger than the brand?
Yeah, I think the mission is the brand, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
There is no bolt on to it. So, Ben has a very authentic founder story. He, had quite a challenging childhood. He was overweight, eating standard American diet, and I think in his late teens, he just kind of made a decision to change the course of his life and start eating better. And he lost weight, but he also saw real cognitive benefits, like his mental clarity improved.
Hmm.
And he became really interested in gut brain connection, so much so he dropped out of college to teach himself microbiology. And he was like, look, I got to take the benefits of this to a broader audience. I've seen so much upside from it myself. And so that really has been his mission from that point onwards. Some of the, you know, emails, response we get back from people are incredible. And that's, where our ambition is high, but also humble in the sense of like, if we can give somebody a moment of joy in their day, if we can help them on a path to better wellness, increase their awareness around their digestive health, give them a substitute that gets them off so that helps them connect with somebody else, that I think is huge. And I think sometimes I see businesses bolting on overly ambitious parallel mission statements to what they're doing. For us, it's like we just want to make this thing as big as we can and as accessible as we can as well. That's really important that we get this into the hands of people that need it.
I'm going to turn to some David Lester questions now. What are some of your role models?
I think my mum was a major influence in my life. I played a lot of sports. She took me to sporting events, and which wasn't that normal, actually. It was normally people's dads that were taking them. My dad just happened not to be my mom loves soccer and my dad didn't really like it that much. So my mom took me. So yeah, there's odd things. I was recounting someone the other day that I remember playing in a match for like Cub Scouts, which was probably not the playing with like elite players in that team. And, I got a little prima donna about demanding the ball. And my mom immediately got the coach to sub me off. I got told off and I had to apologize to the team at the end of the game as well. So, with other people complaining at her, like, why have you taken him off? This is the best chance to win the game. But for her, it was the principle of it. And to me, it seemed totally fair because, more important to her than whether we won a match or not was the lessons I learned around, integrity and how you show up. And so, there's constant examples of that, in my childhood, the way that my mum ran the school. She eventually became a principal, included everybody. They used to give flowers to the staff that did the cleaning and ran the kitchens at the year end. So they felt, appreciated and part of that community. And so, those things had a huge influence on me. I think there's, I do watch a lot of soccer still as well. So I like watching how managers kind of coach teams and stuff. I'm actually an Everton supporter, but I do really admire Jurgen Klopp, the Liverpool manager. I like watching his management style. I think it's pretty interesting. And for me, sport, my chosen one, soccer in particular, is a really good microcosm for management because it's so intense. You see things in like hyperspeed. Like you don't have to wait years to see the outcome of decisions. Like you're seeing it live, and if it doesn't work, then they get switched out, whatever. So, that type of stuff is interesting. And then all kinds of people around me, like living in Atlanta now. I think Stacey Abrams is a really interesting person, and the way that she kind of chooses to present herself and like navigate the world is super admirable. So yeah, there's lots of amazing people out there.
Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you think about?
I'm trying to think of one, and so I think I've got a lot. That there was one I quoted earlier, so it's top of mind for me, which is, I can't remember who made it, but tyranny is the absence of nuance. And I think certainly in today's world, and how we try and approach our business and our work is to really understand more the nuance in the world, and work harder to meet each other where we are, understand each other. I think it's really important, and it's very important in a startup. You can't have superficial analysis; you'll get to bad solutions to things. So, really important to understand the nuance of a situation, what's really driving it. Everyone's perspective in the mix.
Do you have a life goal, a personal goal that you want to take off your list or that you're trying to accomplish?
My goals is somewhat modest, and I'm very hedonistic as a person, so I like doing interesting things. I think I'm conscious that it's kind of miraculous that we're here for a short time, so like, why not do something interesting? And as soon as life gets boring, I start to kind of agitate and look for something like interesting to do or more challenging. One of the reasons I like working with Ben, I think he thinks kind of the same way about things. Really, it's just to get the most out of life, and to the extent you can, which is difficult, to positively impact the people around you. It's amazing how easy it is to do damage unintentionally. So I think if we all did that, it'd be a pretty cool place to live in the world.
I love that. Well, thanks for being with us. It was great chatting with you, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.